We are broadcasting live on Awake Radio and Blog Talk Radio at the same time. My name is Paul, and usually the next line goes, my name is Andy. He's on his holidays. So I have had two choices this week. I can either do it on my own, or I can find another budding radio host. And I have found one for you. Let's get settled, let's get sorted, and let's bring him in just a second. Tuesday the 6th of August 2013, welcome to the Unpenned Show, riding solo but not quite. It is my very great pleasure to actually co-hosting with me this evening, artist, speaker, author, and now, out of all his talents, he has taken the challenge of being an internet radio host. My very great pleasure to welcome Mr. Thomas Sheridan. Hello, Thomas.
Hiya, Paul. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear, my friend, all the way from Ireland. What a pleasure it is to have your company, I must say.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here, and thank you for the honour of hosting the show. I hope I can do a good job while Andy is away on his holidays.
It's a daunting chair to fill. I understand your concern and worries.
And thanks for that intro music. I feel like Miss World. I'm wondering where my my bouquet of flowers and tiara is.
Right, now then, let's... I don't keep up with everything you're doing, but Mr. Thomas Sheridan, ThomasSheridanArt.com, you've now taken the nettle, as it were. You've grasped the very challenging hand, may I say, and every time I look on my Fight Book pages and go to your website, you're busy. You're busy trying different things. You're busy trying to attract people to what is... information that they should be interested in, and your latest escapade. The last time I saw you, you were walking, camera in hand, uphill on a fast.
I was walking uphill where?
You had your camera in hand. You were walking uphill, and you were telling us that you were gonna fast for 7 days and see what happens.
Yeah.
I thought to myself,
I didn't make the 7 days. I got till the Thursday, and something just told me to eat.
Yeah, common sense.
Yeah, and I listened to the instinct. But it was an amazing experience, and I'm definitely going to do it again. Now,
that's where we get the word breakfast from. I mean, we actually do technically fast while we're sleeping, don't we?
Oh, that's true. That's a good one. I never thought about that one.
And it's not a new thing to try. I mean, this is well documented in the 1600s that people almost died trying to communicate with deities they thought would come to them through dreams.
Amazing. Yeah, it's true. And then you have, also the other side of that is how religions and so on would use diets and dietary, timing to control people's perceptions, to make them very easy to control.
That hasn't changed any, has it?
No, what they do now is to give us low-carb, empty-calorie food that has no fat in it. And, people are zombies.
Well, I mean, we're looking... I mean, today and yesterday's big news story was the new 5-ounce burger, wasn't it? The $332,000, £250,000 burger has now been created. This is the next step in frankenfood. I actually think that what's been shown to us is actually what already is. I think we're always living in the past. What they tell us they're producing is already what's been produced. Now they just have to bring it into reality in a way that it's new, it's exciting, it's the future, it's cheaper, it's better for you. All these things are questionable at the very least and make me suspicious at all times, because my local supermarket, not just any old market, it's not just a regular market, it's not just an ordinary market, it's a bloody supermarket. And it has 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, everything I need fully stocked and looking perfect. I'm starting to think this is doll's house food that we're eating, and a little bit of research tells me I might not be far from the truth.
Well, you look at that frankenfood, you see that they're constantly modifying our nature. You know what I'm saying? That they're constantly, what they're really doing is, we have to understand that ultimately the people that see this world don't see us as humans. They see us as human resources.
We are the Holy
Ghosts. Human resource is a nice way of saying livestock.
We're actually the Holy Ghosts in some. I mean, the way I describe reality is as many different ways as I can, because all are correct. It depends who you're trying to connect with. And I remember, I mean, we're hypocrites all round. We only go to church for special occasions and piss-ups, really, don't we? And we go to church, and that guy with the superhero cape on, dressed all in black, who alters everything to suit his story and narrative, and he gets up there and he says, "In the name of the Father," and he always points up northwards, because the Father's above. And then he says, "In the name of the Son," and he always does the east-west travel, doesn't he? Because that's the way the sun travels. And then he always goes downwards to the Holy Ghost. Now, the word holy is actually just the word born. Okay, holy is the word born, and ghost, I wonder if that's to some point connected to the stillborn, the dead, us.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that about the blessing. I don't know what religion you are, but I was Roman Catholic, although I come from a mixed background. But the ones that I was exposed to was that. And I was talking to someone recently that told me that they went to the Mass and they said, "Do you ever notice the way the priest gestures when he goes in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost?" Mm-hmm. And he says, if you follow their hands, it makes a perfect pentagram.
Yes, it does.
And sure enough, I went to see the Mass on Sunday, on the internet, on the broadcast Mass on Sunday morning, and I looked at it and I watched the priest's hands, and as clear as anything, from his perspective, looking at the audience, doing that blessing, he made a perfect pentagram.
It's right in front of us. They alter and pulpit to suit their narrative, but it's right in front of us.
Yes.
And this is the. I mean, everything is right in front of us. I mean, we never ask why the word skill has got the word kill in it. We never ask why the word slaughter has got the word laughter in it. We never ask why boxing rings are square. We never just quite pick up on what's in front of us. It's almost like we're distracted by complexity when everything should be simpler.
Yeah, exactly. Well, language is the ultimate weapon used against us. Actually, the real ultimate weapon used against us is our own thoughts being used against us. But language is the key to that.
Whose thoughts are they? Whose thoughts are they? I mean, we look at our computer, and most people don't see this computer as the next version of us. We just have to make friends with it, and then it'll take over what is virtual reality for it. The animation of the persona, in other words, we can be who we want to be without stepping out of this chair. But this computer, which is just an anagram of corpse and mute because it's dead and can't speak until we electrify it ourselves, it's our light. This is actually, I actually look at the computer in the way that. It's not just the one Antichrist, but by golly, it certainly fits the definitive. But I think that in one definitive, this internet is the Antichrist its very self. It purports to be an angel of light. It's omnipotent. It speaks to us all in our own languages and appears to be able to answer our every query and fulfill our every whim. And here's a funny thing about what may or may not. The word coincidence is really, I think it's just a cover story for people who don't know why. So they claim it to be a coincidence, and life carries on because coincidences are real, apparently. But in numerology, which I'm not convinced is real, but I'm not convinced about anything really, I just know that all things are possible until they're proved to be not so. If you do the 6 numerology on the word computer, and that 6 numerology goes with A is 6, B is 12, C is 18, D is 24, E is 30, carry on right down the alphabet, add in 6 each time, that would be the 6 numerology. And then if you do the numerical values of the word computer, computer, you'll get that numerical value to become to 666. And you think, well, there's a coincidence. There is a very coincidence. And you think, well, 666, mark of the beast. So you say, well, I am aware in Revelations that we cannot buy or sell without the mark of the beast. So you think, okay, I'll take this a little further. So you take the word "the" out and just put mark of beast, and then do the very 6 numerology again, and guess what number you get? 666. It's just a coincidence, Paul. Well, maybe it is, but it's an uncomfortable one, isn't it?
Oh, it certainly is. I don't know anything about that stuff either, but you see, we live in a world of synchromysticism and synchronistic archetypes, where things will conform into predetermined realities by working on them. You'll often see, some guy made an amazing video on the internet about people who had paranormal experiences. It was just like a vlog thing. Paranormal experiences. about the 9/11 experience, and this guy had basically said he was walking to work the day before, looked up at the Twin Towers, and he saw a flash of light and felt very dizzy and very nauseous. And this guy was obviously telling the truth. You could tell he was a decent guy, and he wasn't like looking for fame or anything. But amazingly, and he didn't notice until someone pointed out that the video stopped at 9 minutes and 11 seconds. See, although you say it's a coincidence, on some levels it is, but on other levels, we live in a universe that's very malleable, and yet this is why I always tell people, be very careful what you think.
Well, can we think anything that we haven't previously been told by anybody else? Is that thinking or is that thought? And if it's thought, is it independent thought? Because independent thought would be the ability to be able to connect two dots not previously connected by somebody else. And then does it have any value once you've connected that dot?
What are our thoughts?
Yeah, what are they? I mean, we do. I think, you know, What is the mind? What is the thought process? What is the word thinking? It's very difficult to define in a way that everybody accepts, because apparently the mind is a part of our heads. But is it? And which bit is it? And why do we say, do you mind?
It's not part of our head.
Yeah, you know, but it's confusing, isn't it?
They've never found the human mind in there. They've found synapses lighting up when certain thought processes are happening. But that's like a tedious electronic circuit board passing electrons through a capacitor or resistor. It's not in there. It's just using it as a conduit. The mind is absolutely not inside our heads. This is just, including our gut and our heart also have neurocells in them, and much of our nervous system as well.
It's our will,
We're just basically a television. Ironically, to bring it back to where we, we're basically a computer.
It's the will, isn't it? I think the mind is, you can connect it all the way to the will, because mind is to mean to or mean it. That's how I connect it. The mind is your meant, your intent. And to mean to or mean it is your will. Now, we live in a reality where we have the pen is mightier than the sword. And I think most people have recognised that before. And the pen also can be transcribed to the word head. So head and pen are simple, and the pen is mightier than the sword on one level. But if the pen is the very object that's used to write the will, then what happens at the lower level, which is for us guys, the masses, what happens when we put pen and is together? You see, when we put pen and is together, we get the will he. You see, this language is connected, but it's connected in some amazing ways.
That's a great one. I love that one. Well, yeah, that's what magic is. Magic is the changing of the material world in conformity with will, and a will is also what you read out when you're dead.
I know, and we staying alive is a very difficult challenge in this life. And I think we're starting to realise that the zombie films that have been played upon us over since the 50s, really, but they wrote about the zombies a long time before then. Who are the zombies? And the zombies appear on every level, but more so than ever, it's the parasites, isn't it? It's the dead that feed off the living. So
yeah.
Is it the politicians that feed off us, or is it us that feed off each other, or is it the level above that feeds off the politicians that feed off us? And the answer is that it appears to fit all those descriptions. Well,
George Romero, the guy who made the first zombie movie, the Night of the Living Dead, and also made many other zombie films since, like The Day of the Dead. He was an American dissident, essentially, when he used the zombies as a metaphor, allegory for his hatred of the United States. He was a self-hating American. Right. And that's why the black guy was, murdered by the rednecks at the end, even though he wasn't a zombie. That's what that represented, the racism in America. In one of his films, Day of the Dead, it takes place, a bunch of people are trapped inside a shopping centre. It's an actually superb film, by the way. And this shopping centre, he was talking again about the shopping mall, the American consumer society. It's keeping them alive, but it's also what the zombies want to get into, because they're also, the people who are not zombies are food for the zombies inside the shopping mall. Mm-hmm. So the zombie is a phenomenal allegory. You can apply it to so many things.
Well, you're making me think now of the retail, and retail is a good word as well. I actually love the word retail, because to retail is to tell the same story again, or to remind you of a story you've previously heard. And we have shops that retail all day. And when we walk in those shops, we look at the shelves and we attach whatever story we've been programmed to attach to each of those products. And these retailers, that's why a tailor's called a tailor, you know, because he sells you the costume for the tale, for the story that you want to. But I'm going back to the dress shops in particularly. And we dress our we call them mannequins, don't we? And that's a very close word, isn't it, to akin to man. And I don't like that one at all, because mannequin does come back with the reverse of akin to man.
And the other one, dummy. It's so dummy, you know.
Yep. And the word dingy as well, which of course goes with the water reality, which is one level of what we live in. And the water reality is the financial reality, actually. It's not just the only reality, but this world is really concentrating now on what we'll call greed or capitalism or corporatism or whatever ism you want to say, but none of them make us richer. They all purport to say they might do, but they never actually do they? We live in a water-based reality, and of course we know the money is the water.
Yeah, the currency.
Yeah, but
the issue, yeah.
But it's moving on to energy now, isn't it? Now it's moving. You see, a lot of people say, let's have a resource-based economy, without any research of what that actually means. Now, I sent you, but I know you won't have had time to read it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put underneath the YouTube video that this will turn into tomorrow, I'm going to put the Silent Weapons for a Quiet War document. It is an absolutely mind-blowing document, written in the late 1970s. Now, I don't care if you want to say that's been debunked. I don't care if you want to say that is not real. It doesn't matter to me, because once you've read it, it won't matter to you where it came from.
Is that the one that was supposedly left in a photocopier that some guy was repairing?
Correct.
And it was basically the US military's plans for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
using mind control and not using actual weapons.
Let me just read a little excerpt from it, because I do want to try and get people to look at this. And this is the descriptive introduction of the silent weapon. Everything that is expected from an ordinary weapon is expected from a silent weapon by its creators, but only in its own manner of functioning. It shoots situations instead of bullets. It's propelled by data processing instead of chemical reaction or explosion. Its origins are from bits of data instead of grains of gunpowder, from a computer instead of a gun, operated by a computer programmer instead of a marksman, and under the orders of a banking magnate instead of a military general. It makes no obvious explosive noises. It causes no obvious physical or mental injuries, and does not interfere with anybody's daily social life. Yet it makes an unmistakable noise, causes unmistakable physical and mental damage, and unmistakably interferes with daily social life, i.e. unmistakable to a trained observer, one who knows what to look for. The public cannot comprehend this weapon, and therefore cannot believe that they are being attacked and subdued by the weapon. The public might instinctively feel that something is wrong, but that is because of the technical nature of the silent weapon. They cannot express their feeling in a rational way, or handle a problem with intelligence. Therefore, they do not know how to cry for help, and do not know how to associate with others to defend themselves against it. What a mind-blowing intro that is.
Psychopathic. Only a psychopathic mind could come up with that.
It's mind-blowing, and it reads like that all the way through.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-blowing. There's also a video that goes with it. I'll post the video and the document. It really does. It's uncomfortable reading, but you know what? Reality is uncomfortable. It's a wonderful world, but it ain't all pretty.
Well, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, I spoke about him in Puzzling People. He was this like PhD academic who decided to like destroy the human race single-handedly. He couldn't form a cult, so he did it himself. Because of mankind's, and he wrote Mankind's Destruction of the Planet, and he was sending bombs to US government officials and various corporate owners, and he killed a couple of people. His writing style is incredibly similar to that documentary you just read. The same mindset. The human race is a problem. We have to find a new way of destroying it without them knowing it, almost like a new way of sneaking up on them and killing them.
Mm-hmm.
The same mindset. And you know something, you mentioned there, chemical reaction.
Yes, it did.
It still exists, you know why? Because look how, if you're a Muslim, right, look how Muslims have been vilified, right? They're the enemy, right?
Forever.
If you're a Muslim young lad and you're going, say, through an airport into the UK or United States, and you get the security guards giving you an extra dirty look, question you for an extra long period of time, giving you a body cavity search, what happens is literally chemicals in your body will go haywire. Your adrenaline, your norepinephrine, you'll have, really a chemical reaction inside you.
I remember that feeling the first time I did a radio show. I was terrified.
There you go. That's a classic example of a silent weapon. You vilify, like the Paddy jokes they had when the IRA were bombing the UK in the 70s. A lot of Irish people would watch like the British TV and you'd get these like Irish jokes. Well, that was a way they were fighting back. And did you ever notice as soon as the Good Friday Agreement happened, it became politically incorrect to tell Irish jokes on British TV?
Oh,
the war was over.
Yeah, it is. I mean, well, look at Love Thy Neighbour. That's the first one to quote. I actually watched a couple of episodes of Love Thy Neighbour on YouTube just to remind myself of the world we used to live in and what we used to find humorous. Now, I'm not sure it doesn't fit in today's reality. I understand it doesn't fit. But what I'm curious about is how did it fit in the early 70s? And it seemed to fit okay. I mean, this is mainstream TV. And yet just 10 years later, a mere 10 years later, it became racist to say what they were broadcasting nationwide.
Yeah. That was part of the PSYOP too, was to destroy the indigenous cultures. Remember that show? And a brilliant show, a really good show, Rising Damp, with Leonard Roster.
Yes.
He was Rigsby, the landlord. Remember how the black guy, the immigrant black guy, they were the sophisticate. And where the English guy was just like this backward old racist.
Yep.
This was the transition into the multiculturalism. Not to say there's anything wrong with anyone, we're all equals. But the idea was they were coaching the next generation of British people, as was Archie Bunker in the United States, and Homer Simpson, to say that you, the indigenous male culture, traditional male culture of this society, has had your day.
And it hasn't stopped. You're right. The 80s was the soft rock generation. It was the new romantic. It was the foundation wearing, mascara wearing, cleansing, shampooing, soft rock type guy. They're taking the hard edge. What we call.
Remember that guy Rick Astley? I heard a song tonight. The guy that had those hits, never gonna get you.
Oh, my,
he had a voice like Luther Andross, but he looked like Pee Wee Herman.
Yes, he did.
I don't even believe that was his voice. I think the whole thing was just a psyop.
Well, look at the words we have, though. We've got hard rock, which is still a method of sleeping. We've got soft rock. We've got ballads. We've got garage music. We've got house music. We've got pop music. It all seems friendly, doesn't it? And yet music, I think music is a much higher form of communication than what you and I are doing now. Because it's subtle. It's very subtle that we don't remember the lines, but we do remember the chorus. And we remember how that music made us feel. And the feeling is the all-encompassing, do we want some more?
Well, Plato and Socrates were writing about this 3,000 years ago. 2,500 years ago, sorry.
Yep.
They were talking about how music affected the mind in certain ways. And you'll remember the lyrics of a song quicker than you remember the words of a book you read.
Absolutely, yeah, but
it creates neural pathways in your brain that almost recycle those words.
Well, the clever thing about the internet is I actually see the internet, the difference between reading the internet and reading the book, and I describe it this way. The internet is like scanning a document. Now, when you scan a document, your scanner does what you ask it to, but it doesn't have any memory capacity to remember what it's scanned. Whereas a book, you're actually reading. So the words are now being burned into your head. And what you read is what you write. And that's what computers are programmed by, read and write. So every book we read, it does alter the way we write. And the written word is the spoken word, or the spoken word can be the written word. So what goes in is what comes out of our mouth. And because the internet is the scanner, we can't remember anything that's gone in. But if you read, then you've actually you've printed it. You've printed it into your head. You've become what we call you've painted a picture in your head. And I did this last week, but I think it's important that people try and get this because the word "picked" is the word paint or painter, and the word "ewer" U-R-E is the word burn in Scottish. And what you've done is you've burnt. A paint burn, you've burned into your head. And that's how I describe the scanner and the reader, the computer and the book reader. And I wish people would read more. I really do, but I know it's an art that's falling to pieces. I go search for old dictionaries. I'm actually a lover of old dictionaries to see how the words have travelled over time. And I can buy dictionaries from the 1930s and 1940s for £2 or £3. Well, that's good for me. But something tells me that those dictionaries should be more valuable to more people.
Yeah, but that's, again, languages, now they'll talk about, okay, language is a flux. Mm-hmm. It constantly changes.
Yep.
It constantly alters by itself. It's like a free-form thing. I heard, people talk about, well, the language of Chaucer is nothing like the language of Shakespeare.
I know.
And the language of Shakespeare is nothing like the language of Dickens. Well, the reason for that is those languages have not changed by themselves. They were actually engineered from the top down. They were created by teams working on behalf of the regents to create new forms of diction. This happened in Italy. The language of Italian is only about 150 years old. It was just an amalgamation of the Italian dialects into a single language under the sort of the kingdoms of Italy. Same thing happened in Germany. German was quite a different, from one region of Germany to the other. The languages are very different. Again, they were consolidated about 140, 150 years ago to create new diction. And this diction, this language they create, is designed to create interdependency among the population with themselves, so they have to work together. You understand? It's like business speak.
Yeah,
business speak is the same because it creates interdependency between business. If you're a Japanese guy, I'm an Irish guy, we can talk to each other using the vernacular of business.
Well, you're absolutely right. All languages were restructured. There are about 1750 was the restructure for this one. But you're right, they've all been changed over time to work in the same way, but we can't communicate with each other just yet. But we do know the language of commerce is English. The language of business is universally English. Now, how we do these shows, Thomas, is we normally do like 3 segments, and we sort of split them up by tunes in between. But I don't play the tunes as a break. I play the tunes because I invite people to listen to the words of the tunes that we play. So I got a tune coming up. Have a listen to it. Thomas, when we come back in the second segment, you lead. You lead with what you want to go with, and let's see if we can go with.
I have a rant coming.
Yeah, I've had the first 30 minutes. Let's give you the next 20. But let's have a little break and back in 3.5.
Hiya, Paul.
Okay, you're ready for your rant. The stage is clear.
Okay, something happened to me today. It made me very upset. Well, first I want to say an observation I'm aware of. Special needs people have an honesty and a decency in their vision of the world. I'm talking about people we might call autistics and other more severe handicaps, where they see things with a clarity that the rest of us don't see because they're unfettered by the same new sort of social neuroses that we have. They have other issues to deal with, but they see us very clearly. I always think of like people who have special needs are the ultimate barometer. If they trust you, then you're probably a decent person. If you're not, they'll let you know it in their own way. They'll be unresponsive. But today anyway, I was working in this country town here in the west of Ireland today. I got a day's work, and there was a country fair going on. And I was just watching what was going on at the fair. And in front of me, there was this bunch of teenagers who didn't, this town, I know it quite well, it doesn't have an antisocial element, right? It's quite a nice town. I know all towns have one or two families that do. But this town, I've never seen this kind of behavior. All the teenagers were screaming, and it wasn't just having fun, because I've been to the fair in this town before, shouting, fighting, calling each other's names. The boys, now I'm not talking about young teenagers, I'm talking about 17 or 18-year-olds, were kind of being abusive to the girls, and the girls were sort of liking it. And it was just a nasty element. And I was watching this one kid who I'd say he was about 14, who was like a special needs kid, from what I could tell. He was looking at this one particular group of teenagers in a very kind of inquisitive but almost standoffish way. And I just noticed him doing this. And I was just saying, that's very interesting. He was really, really checking them out. And they didn't look like troublesome teenagers. They just looked like regular middle-class Irish kids. Like they'd be normally well-behaved. And they were about 17, I'd say, was the average age. Mm-hmm. And towards the end of the day, the way they have those, this should be illegal, but they give away to kids, if they can win a goldfish at the fair, You know, there's a little game where they can win a goldfish in a little plastic bag. I don't know if you have that in England.
Oh, my word, I have got... Yes, I understand the goldfish analogy very, very well.
Yeah, well, this guy, there was some kind of, like, riot or attraction at the fairground where you could win a goldfish in a little plastic bag, right? Mm-hmm. And then one of the kids ran over to the other, laughing, and threw the bag with the live goldfish in it at the other kid. And it just exploded, and they all burst out laughing. And I saw the goldfish on the street, a little small goldfish, you know, flapping its tail and trying to survive. Mm-hmm. So I started walking over fairly fast to try and pick the thing up and, you know, try and get into a bowl of water or something just to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And the kids were all laughing at the goldfish on the ground, like pointing at it. The cruelty was just unbelievable. And as I was running over to just about 5 feet away from picking the thing up, one of the boys runs over and jumps and squashes the goldfish and kills it. Mm-hmm. And all the teenagers burst out laughing, including all the girls who were probably like 17 and 18 years old. And all well dressed, not like, I hate to be stereotypical, I come from a council estate, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, they were middle class kids. And I was left stunned by the inhumanity of it.
We're losing touch with reality, aren't we?
It was just awful.
But we're losing touch with reality now. We don't feel other people's pain. We don't feel other people's anything, actually. And it's becoming a little uncomfortable. I think life's always been structured that we always base our own happiness, or we always are happy to achieve our own happiness at the cost of others. But I don't think we've ever been this... cruel, have we? Not in our society.
That's the word I would use, cruelty. Now, I did things when I was a young teenager.
Yeah.
But we all did. That's part of growing up. There's a kind of a period where kids are almost like sociopathic around 12, 13. They can be kind of cruel to other kids. It's almost like a horrible phase. And then you're out of it by the time you're 13, 14, 15. When you get a bit maturity, because you know someone's going to punch you or something if you do anything, or you just understand other people's feelings.
But
you learn compassion a bit deeper.
But are you perhaps illuminating, or are you showing us today? I mean, is that descriptive? Is that because those kids, although they look age 17, is maybe their real mental age still at 12 and 13? Because
I would absolutely agree with that. Especially it was today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how. I'm not going to judge these kids in their normal lives, but yeah, they were like a bunch of 11-year-olds. They really were. I mean, in their designer fashions.
But how old are we really? Because numerically, it doesn't seem to be applicable anymore.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't seem to work. I mean, you talked about handicapped children or disabled children, and we have an awful word to describe them collectively, although it's going out of the language now. We used to call them invalid, didn't we?
Invalids, yeah, horrible, isn't it?
Yeah, we used to call
invalids.
them invalids.
Yeah, you see old buildings around Ireland that they say, they still have the sign on the front from 50 years ago, home for indigents and the invalids,
Yeah, but they because of their problems in life and their circumstances, they by their very nature, and I've actually I've had the pleasure of these people's company for a long time over the years. In my former life, I was a reasonably good DJ, and I used to work the summer times in Bernardo's care homes. And I used to go around the summer times, entertain the kids in Bernardo's care homes. And it was the most rewarding thing I think I've ever done in that line of work. Because the kids, they understood that they weren't, they weren't the lucky sperm of the day. But instead of bothering about that, they were grateful. And they were pleasant, and they were complimentary, and they were curious, and they never stopped asking questions, and they never stopped wanting to join in. And it was one of the most humbling experiences of my lives. And I hope it helped make me a better person. I don't know if it has, because I can't judge that. But what I'm trying to say is that those kids today, they have no value. They don't value themselves, first of all, in a way that you and I would. They have no intrinsic value, because to act like that means that they have no compassion or sharing or empathy. And if you can't share in this life, you're going to really struggle, okay? Because sharing is the very method of how we achieve. Now, some people share things of no value at all. That's called dumb conversation. And some people share things of very important value. And that's called important connections or networking. Now, those kids at 17... maybe they are 12 or 13 mentally, and maybe we can cover that with just, that's what happens when, the madness of gangs. Gangs get together will do things that individuals won't. And that's possibly true. But collectively, when I look around where I live here in North Yorkshire, and I've got a fish and chip shop, and I get to see well over 1,000 people a week of all walks of life, and lots of kids. And the kids are, in many ways, more compliant. They're not as aggressive as they used to be, but they are more cruel and more unfeeling, and they are very much the language they use is short and sharp and unpleasant. And that's the difference. They're actually not interested in fighting. They won't put the fist up and fight. And they won't.
No, but they'll use language and be very snide.
Yes.
And almost bitch queeny, to use that expression.
Yes.
Yes, and you're right about that, because a certain element of their sort of like initiation into manhood or womanhood has been like when I was a teenager. I'm sure we're on the same age. I used to do things like, I think back on it now, I lived like beside a big railway yard, and trains used to come through carrying like Guinness and logs and stuff, slow freight trains, and we used to, they'd be coming through 5 miles an hour, and we used to jump on them and walk along. When I think back at it now, that kind of thing, and ride off the sides of them. Now, they weren't going that fast, but it got that out of our system. You understand?
Yep.
We were not compliant. The sign would said no trespass on the railway, and we'd all run down there. We'd hear a train come and get excited, and then grab onto the old goods wagons, the old four-wheel goods wagons, and grab onto them.
Yeah, yep. Well, we did this, well, not exactly the same thing with trains, but we did it with motorbikes. We had motorbikes, and we fell off, and I broke a leg, I fractured a collarbone, but you didn't worry about these things. You got into things. You actually did things that were... You took risks, but these were your rites of passage. These are the things that you try along the way. You break.
You go to fights. You look at the mods and the rockers and the skinheads, and there always seemed to be like fights when I was a teenager.
But the fights were, if you went down and stayed down, they didn't keep coming at you.
No, and they wouldn't go on the internet that night and call you names or attack your family and run smear campaigns. I mean, a friend said to me, the people who run smear campaigns against you, if you walked up to them in the street, they'd literally shit themselves,
Well, this allows you to be much more than what you are. The internet is a successful place for failures. But one thing that I do want to mention...
I love that, a successful place for failures. just like cults are.
I tell you what I actually feel uncomfortable with, and I'm seeing more and more of this, and I think we're going to have to question ourselves, and we're going to have to question who we really are, because my actual understanding and comfortableness is only been achieved through reading books like yours and many other that tell me what I am. And the books don't describe me, but they describe how to discover me. And that mirror changes every day I look at it. I stare in that mirror and I think, I'm not who I thought I was, but I can be who I want to be. Now I've found out how to be it. And I look at the group mentality that we have with this alternative movement. And I look, and when the licorice all sort wearing legal system, because they have like pinks and oranges and lemons and limes, they are a collective group of all sorts, licorice and colour. And I actually, when these people perhaps take one of our number and arrest them or bring them to the floor, and like this is the Balkan thing that I'm looking at, and the Balkan, they're picking people out of the crowd and arresting them, and what we do is we frighten these police to death by getting our mobile phones out. And I'm thinking, hang on, guys, this is not the way forward.
No.
The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching.
And you know what that comes from? Well, I find that amazing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I find that amazing, right? That you'll have someone like, and I'm not picking on Charlie Veitch specifically.
The rich evil
cheat. When he became famous, complaining about CCT surveillance, and what the fuck was he doing with his camera?
Anybody whose name spells rich, evil, cheat must be taken carefully.
But you know what I'm saying? We're emulating our masters.
Well,
we're becoming mobile CCTV units while calling ourselves, awake.
Well, why aren't we wearing licorice all sort coloured tops? Why haven't we got observers? Why haven't we got defenders? Why haven't we got something? Why don't we call ourselves something? Wear the shirts. And when these police come and grab one of our number, why don't we surround them and say, let them go, they have committed no crime? Why don't we? I'm not talking about violence here, but I'm sick of people saying, non-violent, love is the answer. Look, boys and girls, let's get something straight. This is my show and I'm going to say it. Guns, money and power is the the infinite truth. Everything else is illusion until you change it. Now, talking about it and group mentality, it's not going to change. All right, we have to take the people who want to rule our lives, we have to learn how they do it. And they do it by costume and illusion. So we must copy the costume and illusion, and we must recognise each other by wearing the same things, because that's how they do it. And if we can recognise each other and understand we agree on one thing, that we will not tolerate the police picking and bullying on us, we will not tolerate these pretend actors called hobby bobbies, PCSOs, whatever you want to call them, we will not tolerate being told what to do by them unless they will do what we ask them as well, because these people still pretend to be servants. We got to get the testes. You've got to get some testes here, boys and girls. It doesn't start with the word test. All right, every game is played with a ball. And have you got any to play this game? Because if you haven't got descended testes, you're not a bloody man, you're a child.
Well, speaking of cops, that incident I told you about today, they're called the Garda here. And there was a Garda behind me while all this was going on, and he was talking about football with his friend. Mm-hmm. And the Garda should have at least went over and told the kids to behave themselves. Mm-hmm. But he did nothing. It was just nothing to him.
Well, I remember at Bilderberg, and we can say what we want about Bilderberg, I'm not going there. I was there, and I went there to see who was there. And I can tell you one thing. There was about 1,500 people in the pen, and believe me, it was a triangle-shaped pen. It was right on the edge of the estate, and whether there was somebody in that golf club castle thing, I don't know. I'm not even bothered about that. What I'm trying to say is, there was about 1,500 people inside the pen when they closed the gates. There was in excess of 500 outside, and they collectively said, "Let us in, and let us in." And do you know what? The licorice all sort covered security people, they ran away. They actually stepped to one side. They did not know what to do, because collectively they were looking at them saying, "Let us in. Let us in." And they realised not one was saying it, not two was saying it, hundreds were saying it.
Yeah. I go swimming on a beach here that's illegal to swim in. Uh-huh. And the security guard, the lifeguard is a nice fella, but he's given up telling me to get out of the water. It's because it's a surfing beach. So it's got big waves. I like swimming in the waves.
Yep.
And I just said to him, "I'm not getting out. Nothing you can do about it." And he goes, "Oh, it's a town bylaw." And I said, "But you have no statutory rights over me. You cannot call the Garda and have me pulled out of the water. You can only ask me politely." And now when he walks by and sees me swimming, he waves.
We do have to take our ability to respond back. The ability to respond is called response ability. And it's not we've been blamed, we've been asked to reply to the question being asked. We need to learn who we really are. We've forgotten, by God, we can't remember, put back together for the love of bloody money, and we try our best, but we can't do it. We can't agree, we can't collectivise, we can't unite, and we can't agree which day of the bloody week it is half the time, and we need to ask ourselves why that is.
Yeah. We've been altered. We've been changed. Like you said, conformity. There's a conformist. It is true. The people today are conformists, but they're more vicious in their words. The internet allows cowards and losers to be very, very, very vicious with impunity, because they might think to themselves, "Well, I live on the other side of the world." Mm-hmm. I can tell you for a fact, there's about 7 people that if I meet them in real life, their dentists are going to be put into the next tax bracket. I don't care what they said on the internet; they're going to have to deal with the real world. Mm-hmm. And I've had people who will help me look at them too as well. And this is the way you have to be. I think we need to get back to being, a little bit harder indirect. Stop being a bitch queen on the internet and start being a real man in real life. And the internet encourages conformity, because you have to log in a certain way, you have to sign your password in, you have to do all this stuff, you have to you have to follow the processes to get online, and then when you're online you can be a little maggot who thinks he has a bit of power. The thing is that these people it's like I always say, these are the people, if these existed 400 or 500 years, not 200 years ago, if there was a witch hunt, they'd be the one going, "Burn the witch, burn the witch." But they wouldn't do it themselves.
Witch hunts. We need to be careful, because a lot of people died who weren't witches. A lot of people died who weren't witches. It got to the point, didn't it, where you just had to make...
None of them were witches. No witch deserves to die, except probably the Queen, sorry.
Well, that was... if you go back far enough to the Crusades and the times of the Templars, the Templars had to do a runner because they were accused of witch hunt. They were accused of being witches.
Oh, they got it back. But the witch hunt thing really happened under the Presbyterians after the Reformation. The majority of witches killed during what they call the burning time. The majority of them were killed in Protestant Germany. By an overwhelming number. It was like for every witch burned in a Catholic country, there was like 5,000 in a Protestant country. It was very interesting, and yet they came in with this whole thing of like, we're not superstitious, autocratic papists. We represent modernity and progressiveness. Yeah. And the first thing they start doing is start burning anyone they accuse of being a witch.
And the lies they made up about what the witches were talking about were absolutely amazing.
And it's very sad reading as well. When just having a cat was enough to condemn a whole family.
They used to actually hang around the neck and around the waist while they burnt them.
Oh yeah. It was shocking. But even before they burned them, they used to things like the Salem witch trials with the Puritans in Massachusetts. Most of them were killed by putting huge rocks on top of them and crushing them slowly.
But we still have it. We don't see that the template that is used to control us, it's always the same template, but it continually updates. And as long as it stays ahead of us, which of course it does, in the next million years by Charles Galton Darwin, the grandson or great-grandson of Darwin himself, he says that we always intend to look forward 200 to 300 years in advance. We can't always say exactly where we want to be in 300 years, but we know where we think we want to be, and we change that destination occasionally as time goes by. And there's always been slavery. Slavery is the sale of your labour. It is trading yourself to somebody else, because the sale of your labour is technically slavery. You hand over your labour for what is an amount of money that you'll accept. And that's where we are. We've all been slaves to the system for a long, long time. And the system is becoming so much more corrupt now that we know we're getting closer to the end game. Now, the end game is something that people have been speaking about almost forever. The end game has always been coming next week, next year, next 5 years, next 10, and it never actually has. The eternal end of a closing down sale has never actually come.
Yeah. That's been an enormous psyop.
Yeah.
That's to make you rush to do things. The end of the world has been predicted since about the time of the Book of the Revelations. So exactly. 1900 years ago. And it's been continuous ever since. It's because it's been a fantastic social mechanism. You even look at the Y2K thing. I even remember seeing Y2K ready toothbrushes. But that's why cults use that. Cults constantly use the end of the world thing, and so do the transhumanists. Get on board now, or you'll miss it.
Yeah, now there's a subject. But let's move a little bit then onto the velocity of now. Now, I love the name of that show because that is your live internet broadcast. I love the name. I'm suspecting it means the speed at which we're moving. But tell us a bit about the velocity of now.
Well, I was asked. Lots of people have asked me to do a radio show, and I just wasn't ready for it yet because I didn't know how I was going to do it. And then the Type 1 crew, who I consider these guys friends of mine down in Brighton. As I consider yourself a friend of mine because we've met down in Brighton, and I just liked the way they ran their programs. I just liked how they were. I liked the energy that came off them, and they just said there's a slot available, and I said okay, Sunday night I'll go for that, and I just said I'll do it. And then they said, well, what do you have an idea for the program? I said, absolutely nothing. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Anything can happen. And I said, I'm just going to be like I am when I go for a drink with someone. Just like anything can come out of my mouth. And I said, that's just how I am. I'm good at planning if I'm writing a book or making a film. I can do that okay. But I can't have a conversation based on bullet points and stuff like that. I'm good at ranting and stuff like that. So I just said something like, it'll be in the speed of the moment. And I said, then I thought, speed of the moment, the intensity of the velocity of now. And that's where the name came from. And I thought it was a catchy name. And that's where the name came from.
It is. It's a good show. I have been following you. I actually listened to the first hour on Sunday, but I went out for the rest of the evening, so I will catch the second hour. But I have been following your progress, and I did love it. I did smile when you said, "I have now found a new respect for internet radio hosts." I quite like that.
Yeah, it was very difficult. At first, I was like, "How the fuck am I going to get through this?"
Yeah,
and then but now it's like. Now I'm more relaxed. Now I just literally sit back with my feet up and I just, a bullshit really until it comes into my head.
Well,
but,
that's when the best stuff comes out, actually, when you relax.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and I think Irish people, not to say we're better or anything, but we have it, the gift of the gab, and and that's something I think that I liked about us, that we're good big mouths, and I've got a big mouth, but I hope it's a positive big mouth. I don't want it to, that it's actually helping people to see things differently and maybe not be so. That's why I want to do. I wanted to put humour into it, because there was no humour in this scene, and there was a lot of fear. So, and I used to write comedy, and so I'm writing. I've got a very funny one, hopefully, for the next one, which is going to be a game show hosted by Hitler, and so thing with Henry Kissinger, Prince Philip, and David Rockefeller.
You're definitely you are going in the right direction, because if we don't make this attractive to a bigger audience, then nothing else will really matter. If we don't actually try and engage the kids, although how difficult it is, I can confirm I've been employing kids for a long time. The kids, they have nothing to look back on because they're only young. That they're busy trying to achieve and get to where they want to be. So to get kids to actually study now is very difficult, because they're not here for now. They're here for what can we achieve, and they're always looking forwards. Whereas at the ripe old age of 40-something, you get the luxury of looking backwards. It becomes a proper seesaw system. You talk about what you've seen, but in the past, and you use it to try and pass your experience on to the kids, but the kids are too young to benefit from that experience. And then you have that wonderful saying, "In my day," and the kids have switched off at the third word. "In my day," and they're gone now.
Yeah, well, you see, they don't have a culture either. That was the purpose of creating it. Even when we were growing up at our age, we still had a culture. I came from an Irish culture. You came from a culture in Yorkshire. You knew what your roots were. Since the MTV generation, the young kids don't have a culture, so they don't have a sense of past.
Well, they do have a culture, I think, on MTV, and it's basically a sex-based system. Now, I have watched, I'm not embarrassed, although I suppose I should be, Geordie Shore. Now, has anybody seen Geordie Shore? It is MTV's flag show, I believe, or at least one of them. And it's the ones that I've seen is about a group of kids, sort of, they look around about 18, 22, 23, can't tell for sure, maybe 24, 25. And they're from the northeast. Those wonderful Geordie breed, one of a kind. Not going to be unpleasant to the Geordies, but Geordies are Geordies. And these people are all lovely-looking people in today's young scene, okay? They're all attractive, good-looking people in today's young scene. And this programme is just purely about their nights out, how much they've been drinking, and whether they can get a guy or girl home. That is all the programme's about. There is nothing else, and they travel around the world. I've watched one from Sydney, Australia. They've been to somewhere in South America, Mexico, I think it was, and obviously Newcastle is the home base. And all these programmes are about the arguments, the drinking games, and the people they can take home. And there's nothing else.
No, they're vapid. There's a Jersey Shore one in the United States, and in Ireland we have one called California, which takes place in a city near Dublin, which is sort of like the Milton Keynes of Ireland. Right. And it's the same thing: shopping, shagging, and that's it, really.
And bitching. It's
everywhere.
I know, but this is the #1 show, particularly for the girls.
It's terrifying, isn't it?
Well, it is, actually. I mean, I know the girls...
Well, do you ever wonder about these ratings? Because I think they're like political polls. I just think they pull a lot of these TV ratings out of their backsides.
I'm sure.
You know, like the way the way it was shown with the music business, the charts were rigged for years. I think the TV is the same. Just because they say it's a #1 show, I never believe it anymore. I don't. I think they they tell lies. It's like the political polls.
I think they tell lies.
All these political polls that come around asking the population what that end up in the newspapers. And Ireland is a small country. I've never met one single person who was ever asked to partake in a media poll. Ever.
I've never heard you so understated. I think they tell lies. It isn't the Paul and Andy show. It's the Paul and Thomas show. Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Unpenned Show with me, Paul, and Thomas Sheridan. Sitting in for my co-host who's on his holidays in Scotland, Andy. He'll be back next week. We are in our third and final segment of the evening. We don't do our full 2 hours normally because this gets edited into a YouTube video, and about an hour and 10, an hour and 15, we find that appears to be the most time that people give us, and we are very, very grateful for it. We are broadcast on awakeradio.co.uk and Blog Talk, so whichever method you're listening to, thank you for doing so. The reason I make these shows is very simple. I want to record for my own posterity and for my little girls' future, what we were doing, what we were talking about, how we thought, all the books that I bought she's going to inherit. I want her to see the reality that I lived in, because I know the one she's going to live in will be an awful lot different. If not now, it will be when she gets a little bit older. I want her to judge for herself. She's only little at the moment. I don't feel it's appropriate to try and, influence her at the moment, because she's intellectually she's very good. She's doing very well at school. Everything's going well. I really don't want to upset that progress. She'll come, we'll talk about this in time, but I make these shows to record my thoughts, and if you want to listen, thank you for doing so. We don't do it for fame and popularity. I'd be absolutely horrified if people, really did start listening in massive, great big numbers, but I do appreciate what we get. I really do. Now, The House of the Rising Sun by the Animals, an old folk song. But is it just an old folk song, or is there more to it? Because I actually think the more I hear and read about every song and film and book, this reality has been decoded by many before us. We're just getting the opportunity to do it now ourselves. This isn't new, it's just new to the people who find it at the time they find it. And we have such a short time that we can never decode it all, so I've stopped trying. But I do remember in my early days thinking, I once went to Manchester to a meeting, and we were sat in a dark room, and this room was full of paranoia. This was people who didn't trust each other. This was the early days. And I looked around the room, and I found myself likening people to animals. The fox, the snake, the timid little... And I found them but more often to dogs and cats. And I found that reality was starting to come to me. And then I realised that this really is a sun-worshipping game. We get to call it the sun, but I am pretty convinced that they have another name for him, and that's Lucifer. So, a little bit of a different subject. Not sure if Thomas is exactly comfortable with this one, because I've not heard him talk about it before. So let's say welcome back, Thomas. Where shall we go?
Well, those old songs, those old folk songs, are very, very telling, I think. And The House of the Rising Sun, people don't know enough or pay enough attention to the lyrics in folk music. But it's very, very deep when you start examining all kinds of folk music, English folk music, Irish folk music. They're strewn with metaphors regarding human behaviour. The House of the Rising Sun by the Animals. The Animals are one of my favourite bands in the 60s. Eric Gordon, wow, what a voice. But that song, when you said to me I was going to play this song, I was thinking the first thing I thought was sun symbolism and so on like that. Yeah. But I don't know what the sun symbolism is exactly. You said it's related to Lucifer. My understanding what Lucifer was the planet Venus.
Well, they play tricks upon us. I mean,
yeah.
I don't actually say that I know exactly what's going on, but I do know that the level above us appears to worship the sunshine, because it's in almost all their packaging.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, the sun is the mother of us all.
Well, of course it is.
All the energy on this planet is created by... But at the same time, Paul, they seem to have a kind of a denial of the sun. Or maybe they're trying to keep it for themselves.
Well, they are.
You look at the global warming thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at all those ICPP reports and all that stuff to do with global warming. They talk about everything causing global warming, except that yellow ball of fire in the sky.
Yeah, but they always read the opposite. Obviously, we all know that now.
Yeah, we read the opposite.
Yeah, look in the mirror. I mean, you look in the mirror and you decide which view you want to take. I mean, I've done this before. If you put your right hand on your left shoulder, and stand in front of that mirror. Now then, which shoulder is your hand on? Well, it depends which view you're looking at. Because if you're looking at one you, it's still on your left. But if you turn it around and look back at yourself, it's now on your right. So remember, this is a game of mirrors. Equal and opposites. That's the game, the way the game plays. The sun, of course, is the light. The sun is the illumination that allows us to see. And they've taken that to a very much higher level. Because they claim to be illuminated. They claim to be able to see. The Vatican claimed this in the very early... I mean, the Vatican call themselves the Holy See. Okay, that is the collective name for the Church, the Holy See. That is the ruling Catholic system, is the Holy See. And that's not by mistake, because we have SEE and SEA. And it was thought that blue thing above us was, in fact, an ocean. It was thought that at one point Horus was rowing his boat, wasn't it?
Yeah, the firmament, the water above the water, the water from the firmament.
So
they thought that was water, and the sun, that Horus was the boatman.
Yes, and you know, that's why we've got such a water-based reality. But the connections, how they connect everything up, is nothing short of absolutely... It's tremendous. In fact, as my understanding keeps moving along, it just keeps going, I keep thinking that this is so well connected. This web is so perfectly built. How on earth can a human have concocted this? But yet there appears to be no other solution other than it was human ingenuity that put all this together. Because we are moving towards a singularity. The duality is almost done now. The control system is revealing itself. The curtain is being removed. We can now see behind the veil. And it's got to reveal itself to actually assume full power. And that's where we're going. Now, is it going to be the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years? Well, yes, it's going to keep going. Are we going to actually... Is there going to be a day when we can mark in history when it all comes to a calamitous crash? Well, history tells us that has happened in the past. And when we spoke on the setup for the show a little earlier, you did say... Shall we go and talk about what if the worst actually comes to be? What if this all goes wrong? Because these people are making a play for the entire plan, and they want the whole thing. Now, they've spent hundreds and thousands of years getting ready for this day. What if they cock it up? You know, how prepared are we? Because we're helpless. We live in an electric universe that if the electric goes off, nothing will ever work at all. When the electric goes off, we are completely goosed. I mean, I've got a generator. I've got a little bit of fuel. I might last a week or two. Then what? So, you know, are we prepared? Are we preparing ourselves mentally for at least being able to cope when others can't? You know, when all around are losing their head and you can keep yours, you'll be a man, my son. And those words were written many years ago. So, you know, should we be preparing for the worst and hoping for the best?
Well, the singularity is the end point of what they think is creation. Mm-hmm. Because if duality is annihilated, and they're doing that, if the sort of the Neoplatonist ideas of duality is annihilated,
yep,
and we do not have novelty and friction in the universe anymore, we will cease to have a universe. And you can see they're going in that direction, even with human beings, things like androgyny. Yep. That's been going on for a while, since the Georgian era. But it's getting more complex now. Scientifically, it's more easy to create androgynous beings, and we have androgynous meats and so forth. So that would be one huge part of it. Arthur C. Clarke wrote a short story back in the 1950s called "The Thousand Names for God," and they wanted the basis of the story is that they would find all the knowledge in the universe, and the day that all the knowledge in the universe is discovered, they look up in the sky and the stars start going out one by one. Man had ceased to have a purpose because there was nothing left to explore. And the duality is the ultimate annihilation. Because remember, you say we're dealing with a sun cult. I do agree with that. But what I really do believe we're dealing at the very root of all this is a psychopathic death cult. We are run by a psychopathic death cult that is the Jim Jones in terms of the actual culture of the control system. They want absolute annihilation because ultimately they want to transcend God.
That's why I took it this way towards the end, because I do realise that is a possibility that could become a reality.
Yeah, they want the end. They want. You see, they have a hatred of the Creator. They have because the Creator created something that they can't deal with. And literally what people like Ted Turner and Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and, Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger and all these people, what they really drives them when they're awake at night is lying there saying, how can I shut this shit down and prove that I beat God? What God began with, I'll finish it. I'll finish it off. I'll show him.
Yes.
And like Aaron Franz, who I'm doing a podcast with him soon, wrote the book, did the film The Age of Transitions, and wrote a book called Revolve. And what the title is about transhumanism. And what the title of the book is, the subtitle is Man's Scientific Rise to Godhood. Ultimately, the whole transhumanism thing, the whole singularity thing, is the desire to murder God. Their notion of God.
It's uncomfortable because it's meant to be uncomfortable because the truth is becoming a little difficult to sort of to accept that these people actually do not care. I mean, we talk about one of those subjects that really doesn't people can't put their fingers on is the chemtrails thing, and chemtrails is something that we can argue all day about what's going on, but if we read the right books, you can actually find out that it would appear they're trying to wreck the ozone layer, so we actually stay inside, so we actually become frightened of going out. Well, that's only a continuation of where we are now. They're actually trying to make us frightened to go out now, and this is going to accelerate and accelerate and accelerate until we want to live in ever more secluded but protected areas. This is a long-term program that won't come about next week or the week after. But anybody who is of a certain age can say that sunshine we have today, it looks different. First of all, you cannot see the sun for the circle that it is. It now looks like a bright car headlight that you cannot look at. And secondly, it's too hot. It's
and
actually
also
too
it's
hot.
Different. The tonal quality is completely different now. And this could be because of the atmosphere, not necessarily modifications to the atmosphere, not necessarily. But if you look at photographs up until the 1980s, and as an artist I'm very acutely aware of shadow tones and shadow colours.
Yep.
You look at every landscape painting, every photograph, and it wasn't just because they had Kodak Ektachrome. The Kodak Ektachrome pictures changed after the late 1980s. I have a collection of 35mm slides from the 90s. There was a distinct change in the tonal value of shadows.
Yep.
Shadows before the 1980s had a purple tint in them. Now they have a cold blue tint.
Well, I wouldn't know about that, but I know that sunshine is different.
Yeah, that's why. The sunshine is different. It affects us differently. Light looks different. Just go to your old photograph albums. Look how colours are much warmer years ago. And also plants are responding differently. And they say things like, and then they make us afraid of the sun. Like, wear lots of sun lotion. Or wear, factor this, that, and the other, the stuff that gives you cancer. Don't go outside. Cover the kids completely. I mean, for millions of years, human children were running around in blazing sunshine. They didn't get cancer.
That's what I mean. That's why I know that I look at the programs that have been run in my lifetime and see those programs and the longevity of those programs and think, okay, let's move that forwards. And if we move that forwards, we do actually come to a reality. And I've described this before, and this is my future forecasting. And I'll leave this because this won't be till after I've gone. But that is that the atmosphere, they'll try and create, well, they will create an atmosphere. Not try, they will create an atmosphere that is, we cannot survive outside. We cannot survive in this atmosphere because people know me very well who've listened to this show over the year that I've been doing it. We live in a fish-based reality. It's not just a fish, it's just that this reality is treating us as fish. And we're going to be put into tanks. And we have think tanks trying to work out how they're going to do that to us. Now, a tank is to be encircled, to be unable to escape. And that tank is going to be an upside-down dome city. Now, I don't think that's going to come in till towards the end of the century. Maybe earlier, but the end of the century is going to be where we're all living in an artificially controlled atmosphere, like fish in a tank. Our air will be filtered, and everything around us will be artificial, and the food we eat will be chemically induced, and we will be nothing more than pets kept under a dome called a bowl, which might as well be a fish tank.
And we're heading towards that like you wouldn't believe. You look at, like, when you go to work on the train in the morning, trains don't have windows you can open anymore. You're in a sealed tube where the climate is controlled. You go to an office, you can't open the office window anymore. You're in a sealed box where everything is controlled. Your air, your heating, your oxygen. And you go to a store, same thing. You don't have, you go and they have rotating doors or sliding doors. You enter into the control of whoever owns it. We're being slowly modified to accept that we must live in a hermetically sealed environment where even the very basics of life are delivered as a utility.
Google Glass confirms this. They should be called Google Glasses because they are glasses. But they're not. They're called Google Glass. And we look at the world through Windows. That's why we've got a counterfeit version here. That's why we're called. And obviously, if you have something like a Mac, then you look through the Safari version. So we've got a land and sea. It's just different descriptions of reality. Yeah, and we all go shopping in Amazon, and we all played the fruit machines, and we never knew why we were in strawberries and melons and cucumbers, and we never knew why the jackpot was bar bar bar. We never once asked these questions, and that's because
eBay. Back to the water currency.
Well,
eBay.
Yes, exactly.
What's in a bay? Water.
Exactly. What do we park our cars in? We park them in parking bays. What do we have? We've got Costa coffee. The word Costa is just the Latin word for coast. It's everywhere around us. It really is. Power is possession of water. That's where the word power comes from. You only had power if you had possession of clean water. That's why we say come to the well. Okay, but we say welcome. That's why we put welcome over our doors, which means we've got clean water. Come to our well and drink clean water. These are all historical words that have been around a long, long time. This language that we speak is not new. It's just the newest version of what's always existed. Greece is where it's come from. Greece is the word, it's the time, it's the motion. Greece is the way you are feeling. Frankie Valli did tell us, he did tell us.
Good one.
Yeah, well, we don't have Greece in North Yorkshire. We have beef dripping because I've got a chip shop.
And you just reminded me of another one there. Wellness. We don't go for wellness. Would have meant you had clean, safe water in your property. No, we don't go for wellness anymore. We go for healthcare. Yeah,
we do, and we actually, it's upside down, that, isn't it? Because, the National Health System, or the Death Management Service, as I call it, that actually should be judged on how many people it doesn't treat. The numbers should be reducing. We've got a system.
Worse, yeah.
Yeah, we've got a system that treats us. The more we get sick, it congratulates itself on how many people get sick. It should
during the boom in Ireland, they couldn't build hospitals fast enough. You know why? Because they couldn't keep up with the number of people who were getting sicker and sicker.
It's every generation is getting sicker than the last, and we won't face it. I mean, talking about Ireland, actually, I heard, I read a figure in Ireland and a figure in England as well. That 66% of adults in your part of the world are struggling to pay the bills. Now, here in the UK, we're only at 52% of adults struggling to pay the bills. Now, in the UK, in England particularly, that figure was only 35% in 2007. So in the last 6 years, it's actually increased by 50%. So if we just move that on again, if in the next 6 years it increases by 50%, then we're going to have 78% of adults living hand to mouth. And how much higher does it have to go before we realise that the economy is going to tank? All right, it is going to crash. And when that day comes, what are we going to do? Okay, what happens if it all goes a little bit wrong? Because these people have done this before. I mean, look what happened in Greece. I mean, Greece was rioting because people were starving.
Yeah.
And we've been kept quiet about Spain. We've been kept quiet about what's going on in Portugal. Everybody thinks Ireland has somehow miraculously recovered from its problems. Because we don't get anything this end. We don't get anything at all. In our horror stories, the Red Tops and the Blue Tops, which is just a collection of horror comics, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it at all. It's as if, this is the news and there is no more to be telling you about today.
Oh, yeah, I nearly caused a riot a couple of weeks ago at a local radio station. I thought they were going to arrest me or something. In my usual style, but all I did was speak the truth. There's people complaining about the big problem here. We kind of can't pay their bills because of all these draconian taxes that have come in, and they just called. I don't know how they got my number, but they called me up and they asked me to come down to the studio. So then the studio with the DJ and this other guy. This person's Community Alliance or something, and the guy was just talking about well, people can't pay the bills. They can't pay the bill. What are we going to do? The government doesn't help you with red tape. And I noticed the DJ kept saying, well, maybe the government could arrange the taxes in the new taxes in such a way that they could make them more easier and streamlined to pay. So that the debate wasn't about how these draconian taxes are just evil to bail out the bankers. The the discussion was about how they could make you. It was a given thing that you were going to pay these taxes anyway, and the government was going to do you a favour by facilitating it, so you could be bled to death in a less noticeable way. And then he just says to me, "Well, Thomas, what do you think about it?" And I says, "Well, I don't think people should pay these fucking taxes." And the place just went mental.
I know
but it was like, but I know people afterwards are calling in saying that was the right thing to say. Because the DJ nearly went green because he'd never heard. Well, of course, the radio was after 9, but the DJ nearly went green because I was changing the complete paradigm of the thing to, no, this isn't about how to suffer with dignity. This is about how not to suffer at all.
Fantastic. I mean, when you actually don't stay on what is their script, it absolutely wrecks the whole thing, doesn't it? Because when you say no, there's no space in there for the word no. There's no space in there for we're not having it. There's no space in there we're not paying it and you're not getting it. Now, why do you think how we've got so far down now? The descent is well underway for humanity in this version, and I call us the white dinosaurs because it is the white Western dinosaurs, particularly the white Western dinosaurs, that have been subjected to this descent in its full force. And that is the UK, it is America, it is Canada to some extent, it is Australia, it is New Zealand, it is the white Western system that is being subjected. Now, are they actually raping the system to keep the system going, or are they determined to bankrupt us and bring us all down? And if they do bring the countries down, obviously they're going to bring China upwards. Now, this isn't going to go very well with those dinosaurs. We're actually going to kick off, and I'm not sure whether they want us to kick off, whether they want us to fight, or whether they don't want us to fight. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, they want us to fight. They want revolution, because this would give them the excuse for the totalitarian, the absolute extreme totalitarian, the hobnail boot stamping on the face for all eternity. That's what they want. They are edging for that. Now, you were saying that, you said something in the show that, like, we should surround the policemen so they can't arrest somebody. That's the way to do it. But what they really want is people wearing bandanas and anonymous masks, throwing petrol bombs at them.
Yeah.
Because that's what they're really, I can see it here in Ireland. That's what they're edging to in sight. And I tell the people, do not riot. Do not fight the cops. Make them feel uncomfortable. Just like you said at Bilderberg, where the security ran away after people were chanting, It can be done without violence.
I just think we need to recognise each other. I know this might sound silly, but I truly believe that if we all wore these crazy licorice all-sort coloured vests, if we all wore the same, if we all realised that to put the vest on is to be prepared to stand, if that vest was, in many ways, the confirmation that you will step forward if an injustice is being done on somebody that is part of your group, if you will step forward, if you will intervene to try and stop this injustice, this arrest, this attack, whatever it may be, putting that jacket on means that you will, as opposed to you're going to put it on, but when it comes to it, you're going to get your phone out. And I wonder, can we get that mentality going? Not that we want to fight, it's just that we'll stand as a collective unit to say no. No, you're not taking him away. You're not having him. You're not going to trump up some charges. We're not going to let that happen today.
Well, it happened in England with the poll tax.
It did, but
it happened before, and it happened with the African Americans in Alabama and Mississippi. They refused to use the local bus service and instead cycled, walked, and got their friends to give them lifts to work, and they bankrupt the local transit companies. It has happened before. I mean, India was freed by it. India destroyed the British Empire simply by making their own clothes and salt. We can do it. We just have to remember that we've done it before and we can do it again. You can say no in lots of ways. You can say the most powerful way of saying no is not even to articulate the word no. It's just not to comply.
It is. It's to stand there with a smile on your face, knowing that they don't even need to ask you because you're
not. Yeah, they say to you like, I'm reading a book about Nazi Germany. The beginning of it, and it was just disgusting what went on there. But there was lots of Germans in the brown shorts, and even some in the SS that were told to arrest certain people, and they might have felt bad for them, and they told them, they gave them a chance to make a run for it and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then there was other kind of like Jobs Worth robots who just did anything they were told. But it made me realise how human these totalitarian stories are, and it's not so black and white. And there was there's Nazis and vicious thugs and fascists everywhere, but there's a lot of person who can look into the face of another person and see their humanity, and if there's no one's looking, they'll say, look, make a run for it. I'm supposed to arrest you tonight, but make a runner.
This is what I say this every week, that you know what? If you read the newspapers and watch the TV, you're going to be convinced this world is full of bad people.
Yep.
If you don't read the newspapers and you don't watch the TV so much, if you get out there, and I'm very lucky, I realise that with the way I'm speaking, it's not easy for most people. I encounter hundreds and thousands of people a week, and you know what? They are lovely people.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yep. I
go all over doing talking and stuff, and from Yorkshire to Norway, you name it, everywhere. It doesn't matter, wherever I go, everyone is the same.
Yep.
Everyone is nice, easygoing, laid back, and just wants an easy life.
And that's what we all want, and we need to ask the question, why can't we achieve it? We do want to be left alone, to keep our money, to spend it as we choose. We do want paying a reasonable wage, and we would like a nice holiday each year, and to be able to change the car every 2 or 3 years, and have a little bit of money left every month, so we can call ourselves profitable and successful. And you know what? We did have that 40 years ago, but that's a long time ago now.
Yeah, that world is gone, and that, back then, people really did want a kind of materialistically strong life. They wanted a better quality life, especially coming out of World War II. But one of the things one of the most horrific psyops of the 20th century that was ever played was the treatment of middle class and working class people in Britain following World War II. Even though they held out against the Nazis, even though they protected the British establishment, essentially by going to war and doing their rationing and all this stuff. The 1950s was a horrible time in England. There was a stay-at-home generation, no money, no work, and they still had rationing. Things didn't get better until the 60s again, and they got better in the early 60s because the youth said, screw that, I'm not staying at home. I'm not, it happened with the Aden crisis, where they tried to implement the draft again, because the Prime Minister Eden tried to implement the draft, and the English people were sending back little pieces, and the Scots and Welsh as well, were sending back the draft card with words like bollocks written on it and stuff like that. And that really rattled them, and that was because the youth looked at their parents who fought World War II, were given nothing for it, were still living in squalor, still expected to go down the pit for the same shitty wages, work in the factory the same unbelievable hours for the same crap wages, and got nothing from it. So, you see, the psychopaths who run the system often push it too far too soon.
And that is possibly where we need to be confident that we do have, but we don't have the numbers, but we do have the ability to because the one thing about psychopaths is they're bloody cowards. They're actually, to actually confront them and say, no, I can see what you are, I know what you are. You're just a little boy. You're a little boy with too much power. No, you're not having it. When you actually do that, they actually just dissolve. They actually fall to pieces. Look at our politicians. Look at these people when people like Luke Rudowski and others confront them. They mumble. They won't answer. They want to be aware. They won't speak to us because individually they're frightened of us. Now, when they
live in a different reality.
Yeah, when they collectivise in their wonderful clubs and pat themselves on the back on how jolly clever they all are and how jolly dumb we all are, well, that's their reality, but it's not our bloody reality because we're the makers and they're the takers, and they don't have anything if they don't have us. The numbers are rising, not fast enough, not quick enough, but once you get into this, nothing else compares, nothing else really is as important as trying to learn something that you can share with other people that might just get them into the, I must protect myself and my family. What have I been doing all these years? I've been wasting my time. I haven't spent it wisely, but now I have to learn. There's no other game in town once you actually get addicted to this stuff.
Oh no! And when you see like politicians on canvassing or making speeches on TV or doing their party political broadcast, it just looks like you're watching the most absurd thing in the world. Because you know that, and you just know that it's all a game, it's all rigged, and it's all a lie. And it's all about, man, this is why I tell people don't vote. Because when you vote, you what you do is you give legitimacy to your rulers.
Yes, you do.
You tell that you're giving a receipt to the slave master.
You are. You're saying I want to be. You're saying I want to be governed.
Well, it's like I said the other night there on Facebook, and it kind of became a meme very quickly. I said politics doesn't suffer from corruption. Politics is corruption.
Legalised theft, of course it is. It really is. Now, I have thoroughly enjoyed our time, and we are going to get towards finishing up now. I can't finish on a solution that isn't always the same solution I give every week. Don't waste your time with people that don't want to know. Don't read stuff that doesn't make your life more. It doesn't enhance your life. Try and focus. You know, if you're just young, I realise that this isn't for you. Maybe not just yet. But if you're 40-something and you've got kids, it is for you. It's almost a duty. How could you ignore this? Ignorance is no excuse now. The internet does give you the starter for 10. And what you do with it after that is you look in the mirror and you decide, who are you really? You know, have they done such a good job on you that you actually are a coward? But you can't use those words. But still you feel small and weak and powerless.
Well, who are you meant to be? That's really what it is.
Yeah.
And another thing too, as well. You mentioned fellas around our age and women around our age. We're around long enough to see the plan unfold.
Yep.
Because it happened we were, compared to our parents or grandparents, we saw the plan unfolding at an exponential rate. Mm-hmm. They really rushed it along during the 80s and 90s. And we saw that. Mm-hmm. And we saw, hold on a second, what's going on here? And even people who are not awake have an instinctual notion that something dodgy or something fishy is going on. Now, we were the ones who said, okay, there is something really fishy going on. But I really do believe that deep down inside, a lot of people know it. They're just afraid to talk about it because they're afraid. But all it takes is for that little fear to vanish, and we have a revolution.
You just open the door.
A revolution of consciousness.
Yep. The first part of opening the door, the actual little frame inside your door, you know, inside any door frame, you know, a joiner or any carpenter will tell you this. When you open the door, the actual inside, the internal part of that frame, that little 2, 3, 4 inch surround, you know what it's called? It's called the reveal.
The reveal.
It's called the reveal. And I hope people, you know, ask the question, why have I got 13 stairs to my landing light? I hope people wonder why doors are 6'6" and 2'6" wide. I hope people ask, why is it the 32nd degree when water becomes liquid from being frozen? Why is it the 33rd degree when things can fly? How does this temperature gauge work? I wish, you know, people should ask the good questions. Everything is connected, but I can't connect it all for you. You have to start doing it yourself. The reason I actually do these shows, along with what I've said, is to try and infect other people with the word game. Because the word game is what the spin doctors use. That's why it's called to whir. The spin doctors play with us. We get absolutely hypnotised, hypnotic-ized with those words. We actually want to believe them. It allows us to live our life as we want to. But they've been lying to us all our lives. How much longer? How many times do they have to fool you before you think, this isn't working out too well for me, really? You know, when they've got all the money, what are we going to do? What are we going to do when they've taken all the money? Because when they've taken all the money, we are reduced to beggars. We're reduced to nothing but beggars. You know.
Well, that's what they want.
I know.
Technocratic serfs.
I know. If you listen to this on YouTube, it is my thanks to you for doing so. It is our little Tuesday night rant. Normally it's Andy and myself, but I have had the wonderful pleasure and company of Mr. Thomas Sheridan this evening. You can find what Thomas is up to at thomassheridanarts.com. That is actually the link below this YouTube video as well. Anything you want to add, Thomas, before we say goodnight to our wonderful listening audience?
No, thanks. It was a brilliant night. I really enjoyed myself. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks to Andy and yourself for letting me have the opportunity to jump in. And I've got some surprises coming up in the future. I'm moving into a whole new field. I've done the psychopath thing, I think, as much as I can do it. And it's up to other people to take that baton and run with it. Hopefully they don't run in silly ways with it.
It certainly is. Thomas, a pleasure it's been. The Velocity of Now, that's live on Sunday night, 6 while 8 p.m. on the Block Talk system.
It's 7 to 9 GMT.
Oh, 7 to 9, I do apologise.
On the Type 1 radio network.
I shall promote your show, and
thank you.
Thank you for your company.
Bye, Paul.
All right, I'll speak to you after the show. I've never... Tom, we're going to have our second drinks break of this evening, second segment over with. I'd like to, if we can, discuss this next tune after I've played it. My thanks to absolutely everybody then for listening this evening. We're back next Tuesday. Have a good week, everybody. Keep safe and be confident. You're doing the right thing. Good night from me, Paul, and from Thomas Sheridan, a wonderful guest. Have a good week till next week. Bye-bye, everybody.